we don't have the luxury of not having a goal and not having a plan, because if we truly are in the business of saving lives, we don't have that luxury. We have to have a plan. We have to have a tactic. We have to have an approach to reach the people in our office and in our communities. And there's ways to do that.
Hello and welcome to the Remarkable CEO Podcast, a show dedicated to chiropractors who want to transform their job into a business, so that they can have a remarkable practice as part of a remarkable life, not instead of one. With your hosts, Dr. Pete Camiolo and Dr. Stephen Franson.
Welcome to another episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. I'm Dr. Pete Camiolo.
And I'm Dr. Stephen Franson.
And it is a privilege and an honor to be on this remarkable journey with you. I hope that your journey so far here in 2021 has been remarkable. If you've listened to some of the podcasts leading into this episode today, you've heard us talk about the word for the year, the business word for the year being agile. We're going to dig into that a little bit today when it comes to how do we market in 2021. We're going to have a conversation about marketing in 2021 from the CEO's perspective. And this is coming straight out of our conversations with dozens of CEOs right now. We're going to be discussing what are the challenges, what are the obstacles, what are the mindsets, what are the beliefs that's right now going on in our chiropractic space regarding marketing in 2021. Again, the content that we're going to be discussing today is relevant. It's important right now. So thank you so much for being a part of this. I also want to thank so many of our great listeners for being a part of this podcast. And I'll be honest, I had a couple doctors I want to give a quick shout out to. One is Dr. Trent over in the Gold Coast, and one is Dr. Pete from up here in the Minneapolis area in Minnesota, who is listening to this podcast. They've been listening to this podcast. They've been taking action on this podcast, had an opportunity to connect with them here in the last few weeks. And they've decided they want to get on the journey with us. They've joined our remarkable program, and they are now working with us individually on growing their practice. And Dr. Stephen, I'll tell you, it's just an amazing thing to see that the podcast is really working to educate and develop and equip doctors and get them to these places where they're discovering that there's a better way to run their business. There is a way to become the CEO of their business. And I'll tell you, there's many clients that I have that I'm currently working with that this podcast has added so much value to them. And they'll tell them that to me, that this has been a resource for them in helping guide them, in running their business. And I can't tell you how excited that makes myself. And I know Dr. Stephen, you as well, because that is our heart behind this podcast. We know that this is meant and designed to be a resource for you, something to support you on the journey and in the midst of it all. So Dr. Stephen, I don't know if you have any thoughts on this, but before we get into this topic for today, but I'm encouraged about that. And I just want our listeners to know that, we're here to support you through this podcast. And if there's any additional support that you need, please feel free and reach out to us.
Yeah, Pete, the beginning of the year comes with so many blessings. And one of them is it causes us to just take a minute, right? Take a pulse, take a breath and look back at the year. And very often it creates a conversation around gratitude, right? To be able to say, what are we grateful for? And this, I'm just rolling right off of a mastermind week like you are right now. So, we've got a couple hundred docs working with us, coaching either privately or in mastermind groups. And now we've got, almost 200 CEOs that are in our program, which is incredible. I had, I think, 14 mastermind groups this week. But that is so many interactions with chiros that are taking this content, taking these lessons, these learnings, and putting it on the ground in their businesses. And it's just been so honestly fulfilling to listen to the impact that this has made in their practices and frankly in their lives. So my cup is full, man. I mean, my sails are full of wind right now. I'm super stoked about what we've done in 2020 and looking forward into 2021, just so encouraged because we have such a great head of steam. It's one thing to say, oh yeah, that was great content. It's another thing to say, man, I really learned a lot. It's another thing to hear we're actually implementing and trusting, but man, to hear the outcome outcomes that our people are getting, that our clients are getting, is just extraordinary. So for those of you who are listening, because I know I heard it from so many of our clients that they listen to the podcast regularly. I just want to just say thanks, guys. Just really appreciate the trust and your fellowship. So if you're listening to this right now, you know that 2020 was not a year that you wanted to do this on your own, right? So if you may be feeling that in your belly right now, it's like, man, I would have loved to have had a cadre of like-minded, on purpose Kairos around me, surrounding me through the wilderness of 2020, right? So don't go into the wilderness of 2021 without your pack, man. We're pack animals, and you want a tribe of like-minded, on-purpose people that you can contribute to, and you will get so much from. So don't do this alone. You don't have to do it alone. We'd love to come alongside you. And there's a group of just awesome Kairos, remarkable Kairos, who have decided, you know what, I want to take my practice and turn it into a remarkable practice. And then I want to take that remarkable practice and turn it into a remarkable business. So if you need help with that, please let us know. All you gotta do is message us. We're very approachable, guys. Let's jump on a call. Let's brainstorm, see if it's right for you, see if you're ready for it. And let us get clarity for you around exactly what are you trying to accomplish in 2021? What do you need to start doing and stop doing? Help you create some priorities around that, a timeline. And you know, the power of a coach and a group like a mastermind is accountability, right? That's the fastest way to get those things done. Gosh, man, we got to see that in 2020, Pete.
Yeah, and you know what? The thing that's coming to my mind is action. You know, it's time to take action at the beginning of a year. You know, it's about action. You know, one of the questions that I asked, you know, the CEOs in our early masterminds, and this is something that I focused on even in the mindset series, was, you know, what needs to be removed. You know, a lot of times I think as doctors and then as achieving people and business owners, entrepreneurs, we're always adding. But I'll tell you, it goes back to the principle of chiropractic, which asks the question, where's the interference and what needs to be removed? And so as we get into this conversation about marketing today, we're going to create a framework for you that I truly believe is going to help you identify what are the things that need to be removed and what are the areas where you need to focus. And the framework that we're going to present to you today is going to apply beautifully to this conversation about setting up your marketing plan, setting up your marketing calendar, setting your goals for 2021. How do you do that even in the midst of uncertainty? How do you do that when what you used to do that worked maybe doesn't work now? How do I apply these principles now? Because they're principles, which means they're applied in any season, in any situation, and they work. Work is that they drive outcomes, you know, the desired outcomes. And so we're going to be discussing that today. You know, Dr. Stephen, I know that this has been a question that I've probably handled more this year so far, which is, you know, how do we market right now? Like what's the way that we can market? And we have some doctors that are doing really, really well, some that are not doing well. But there's one thing that I have identified across the board as a principle that must be applied, and that is, we have to have a game plan. You have to have a game plan and you have to set goals. So these are absolute truths. These are absolute facts. So regardless of whether we you know, you're doing things that you're comfortable with or that you've ever done before, regardless of the level of certainty or uncertainty that's going on, we don't have the luxury of not having a goal and not having a plan, because if we truly are in the business of saving lives, we don't have that luxury. We have to have a plan. We have to have a tactic. We have to have an approach to reach the people in our office and in our communities. And there's ways to do that. So today is a really a higher level conversation for you, docs, to get everybody on the page of that confidence, that certainty, and that clarity about where we need to be moving forward in 2021. So Dr. Stephen, I want to toss this over to you, and I want to talk about the acronym that we already covered in a previous episode that really is the framework for what we want to talk about today, about how do we approach marketing. We always want to have a framework, and the framework is APPEAR. It's APPEAR, and APPEAR actually stands for, and it's beautiful because it goes perfectly with marketing, right? So when people need help, you should appear ahead of them, right? When they're looking around, you all of a sudden appeared, right? Wouldn't that be awesome if every time a person in your community was needing help with their health, you appeared, right? So APPEAR perfectly fits this conversation. But APPEAR stands for assess, plan, prepare, execute, assess, repeat, right? And so when we look at this, the first thing we have to do is we have to assess. And that's how we make informed decisions moving forward in 2021. Dr. Stephen, I know that you had a conversation. You've been having these conversations as well with CEOs. So let's dig in.
Yeah. So this time of year, there's a success strategy that I've employed for 20 years, and it's a start doing and a stop doing list, right? So start doing is, we all love start doing lists, right? So especially CEOs, we love to say, all right, I'm going to start doing this, I'm going to start doing that. So next thing you know, we've got 10, 15 items that we're going to add to our already busy existence, right? So yeah, that's a great idea. I love the idea of a start doing list, but it's not nearly as valuable to the CEO as the stop doing list. Like what you said, Pete, there's some things that you need to let go of, right? So here's what we all know to be true. The natural state of a principled chiropractic practice is growth. So I'll say that again if you didn't catch it. So the natural state of a principled chiropractic practice is growth, right? And if you're not growing, and by growing, I mean like freely and readily, not easily, right? So just freely and readily, the natural state of a principled chiropractic practice is growth. If you're not growing, it means that simply that there's something interfering with the growth, right? So an interference, as we know, only comes down to two things or both, which is toxicity or deficiency or both, right? So we teach our patients this about their health. The natural state of the human body is to express health. And if you're not expressing or experiencing health, there's just simply something that's interfering with the natural expression of health, right? You're very comfortable teaching your patients that. And you also teach them that, there's only two things that cause interference, is toxicity or deficiency or both, right? There's toxicity, there's something there that doesn't belong, that's innately toxic to your cells. So you got to stop doing that. Or there's something that's innately essential for cell function, and that's missing, right? So you look across the domains of lifestyle, how people choose to eat, how they choose to move, how they choose to think. You know the story, and you reconcile those behaviors, right? So that's how you help somebody return to health. So same thing said for the living organism of your practice, of your business. The natural state of a principled chiropractic practice is growth. And if you are not growing readily, it just simply means that there's something that's interfering with that growth. So what you want to identify is where are the toxicities, where are the deficiencies, and reconcile them. And like you said, Dr. Pete, there's what do you need to stop doing is the conversation that so many of us need to have, right? So I'm going to pivot on that and say, I've heard some questions coming down the pipeline in the last 2-3 weeks. I've heard some commentary from a lot of clients who feel uneasy going into the year about putting together a plan, setting goals for 2021, right? So they feel uneasy putting together a marketing plan or setting goals around the growth of their practice, their business going into 2021 because of the uncertainty, right? So they feel like, oh yeah, man, we're kind of feel like we're like wandering into the wilderness in 2021. There's so much unknown, right? There's so much uncertainty and lack clarity, right? So I don't want to set a plan in place or set goals that that we don't reach and demoralize my team. So let me just take this a minute right now to just say that limiting belief needs to stop right now. That needs to stop right here and right now, because the worst strategy you could have is going into the wilderness without a plan. So I want to encourage you, docs, leaders, CEOs right now, that I absolutely want you to set a plan going into 2021. I want you to be ambitious setting your goals for 2021, because I know a lot of people are sort of doing a rear view assessment right now of 2020. And let's be truthful. So many of us are wiping our foreheads and kind of having a whew moment like, wow, not only did we actually survive 2021, I mean 2020, we actually did pretty well. And the majority of our clients, frankly, grew. Okay, so they grew in 2020, and although they were fully expectant of that going into 2020, I would say by Q2 2020, they weren't so sure of that, right? So as the plans that they had laid, the goals that they had set might have been challenged by the environment changing around them, and there was so much uncertainty, right? So we were able to pivot, okay, and we were able to shift and change the tactics, recognizing that the value that we deliver hadn't changed, but the way we were going to deliver that value had to change. And that was the spirit of pivot. right? So here's the truth, Pete, is you can't pivot if you don't have your feet firmly set on a foundation. You can't pivot in midair, right? So for many of our docs, they finished the year better than they had even set out to do in the beginning of the year. They had best years ever last year. So many of our docs really grew by 5, 10, 15, 20% or more. Okay. I know our business grew by more than 30%, right? So I know that the middle of the year was a little wonky and we did have to pivot. Okay. But man, I was so very glad that we had a firm foundation, our feet planted on a firm foundation of a plan to begin with. So many of us went through a squat second quarter and third quarter. And the squat is when you dip down, but your feet are firmly planted on a foundation and you can jump from that squat, right? So you can't jump in midair. So I want to make sure that we land on the conclusion that in 2021, going into the wilderness, we absolutely want to have a firm plan in place. We want to set goals. We want to have a marketing plan that will support those goals and predictably manifest those goals. We want to be expectant of a great year ahead, expectant of great outcomes, but also expectant that the way we get there and achieve those outcomes might be different than we set out to do in the first place.
Okay, let's take a quick break and talk about Chiro Matchmakers.
Chiro Matchmakers will help you find the right person for the job. If you're looking to hire the ideal chiropractic assistant, Chiro Matchmakers will help you find the specific person missing from your team so that you can get back to using your talents to serve more people. Or if you're looking to hire the ideal associate doctor, CMM can help. Chiro Matchmakers helps chiropractors like you find the ideal associate doctor to unlock your practice potential and get you the freedom that you desire. To learn more, go to chiromatchmakers.com.
And now let's jump right back into our conversation. Yeah, it's such a powerful framework. And again, you just laid out exactly how we need to approach this. So I want to unpack it a little bit more. One of the first things that I heard you say is that you have to have a plan. So if you're listening to this right now and you don't have a clear plan, that's going to be the first action step is let's put together a plan. That's the first step is let's put together a plan. And the best way to put together a plan is to assess. It's to start with assessing what have we done? What did we do in 2020? What did we do in 2019? What worked? What didn't work? Right? It's that stop-start thing. We ask that question. What was working? What's not working? And what did we learn? So we're assessing that data that we captured during the year, the data that was what were our numbers from all of the activities that we did externally, internally, digitally. What were the outcomes of those investments that we made? What was the return on that investment that we made? What are we going to continue doing? So you've assessed that. So that's the first step to planning well, is to assess so you actually get your starting point. Okay. You have to know where you are to determine where to set the GPS as far as the directions to go. You have to have a clear understanding of where you are. This is the reality of where I'm at. So thinking about where is my business right now here in 2021? Where is the state of the world? Where is the state of my town? Where is the state of my state? Like, what's actually going on? Let's be thorough in our assessment of where we are right now. So we're assessing the actual data, the results. We're assessing culturally. We're assessing the actual climate that we're in. And we're gathering all that data into our planning. So there's an intelligence to this. There's a high level of intentionality. And that's why it takes time. And that's why if we don't invest the time, we talk about the time you need to dedicate to work on your business versus the time working in the business. And a lot of times the owner-operator default mode is working in the business and having very little time and maybe just leftover scraps to work on the business. And then you're so tired and you don't have your best work. Can't you do your best work? That we don't do our best work when it comes to planning. So planning requires time. It requires a thorough assessment. That's the first step. And then the second piece is, as you said, is really the spirit of the conversation is we are going to be agile this year. We talked about it in that episode. We talked about contingencies. We talked about having a plan A, a plan B, a plan C, and D. So we know that there is a contingency here. If this happens, then we're going to go here. If this happens, then we're going to go here. So we have that. And you talked about that. I think you gave a military example about the Navy SEALs and how they show up in situations in tactical situations, that you have to have these contingency plans, because who knows where there's going to be a bomb or something's going to go wrong. We have to be able to respond to that. So as CEOs, it's our job to do our best to equip and prepare our team, ourselves mentally, physically, to be able to respond. And you went through that right now. The expectant factor is such a critical factor. The expectancy. We talked about agile, being agile. Number one is adjustability. Number two is grit. When you're doing marketing, you have to be gritty. There has to be an energy behind this that's just full of passion and perseverance and persistence, where we're looking at a long-term picture. And this is why you have to have a vision of what does success look like to us 3 years from now, ultimately, 1 year from now, next, where are we going in the next quarter? And if you can stay focused on that, then you're going to have the grit, the passion, the perseverance, the persistence to drive through even things that fall short, even things that, like you said, when you have to squat, we're going to make it through this, and we come out of this, and there's going to be a time where we're going to go from that squat into that jump. We're going to come through this. That's then leads to being innovative. We have to be innovative when it comes to our marketing. We have to be open, CEOs, to doing things that maybe you've never done before, doing things that are maybe even uncomfortable for you. How many of you, when you first did your first Facebook Live, were so ready and prepared and it was so easy for you, right? It wasn't easy. Some of you haven't even started doing things like leveraging some of these platforms to reach your audience. So maybe that's something you need to do this year. Maybe it's hiring somebody to actually help you with marketing because you've always just done it yourself. And I need help with this. I need support in my business this year. Maybe we need that new business development person on our team. Maybe we need to hire a marketer to do some things for our website, to make our actual website more approachable, and that can actually work to maybe bring people into the office. Maybe we need to do some work on our social pages, whatever. So innovative, what does that look like to be relevant and innovating even in this time? And then leadership question is, who do I need to become? So when I think about my marketing, when I think about the marketing approach that we have this year in 2021, who I became last year was a setup for who I need to become this year. It's not the destination. It's a stop on the journey. And so who do I need to become in 2021? Who did I become in 2020 that prepared me for this moment to ask this question once again? The leader perpetually asks themselves the question, who do I need to become in the area of marketing and our business? And then, of course, last is the expectance factor. That is where the faith and the energy comes in. That's the last part of the Rubik's Cube, energy, focus. Your energy and your focus needs to be expectant. We're expectant of good things. The definition of hope means the confident expectation of good. And so we have to have that level of expectancy. And we get to have expectancy when we have a plan. When expectancy is connected to a plan, that, my friends, that is power. And that's when people can come on board and your team grabs a hold of it. Your patients will grab a hold of it, and people will follow, and people are going to go.
Beautiful. All right. So let's talk about, let's get practical and tactical around, what does that look like? So CEOs, if you're note takers, this is where you want to get that pencil out and that paper, because this is a system, right? It's a process that you have to go through. And it's something in the appear process, when we talk about assess, plan, prepare, execute, assess, repeat. Assess is you're assessing the outcomes, and you assess the plan that led to those outcomes, right? You assess, how did we execute on those? What were the results from the plan execution, right? So you're informing yourself as you look forward and create the new plan for 2021. What'd you learn from 2020? We ask, where did you win? What did you learn? And take those learnings and let that shape your plan and your expectations or goals for 2021, right? So there's three things you need to have. Number one is number one, the plan itself, which is a structure, which I'll talk you through in a second. And then number two is that plan gets fleshed out on a calendar so that you know do what, by whom, by when. And then there's a content calendar that's a complement calendar to that organizes what are we talking about? What's the content, and internally, externally, and digitally, what is actually the content or the subject matter that we're going to be talking about, focused on, promoting, etc. Right? So the first step is the plan. Now, we have traditionally in chiropractic taught the three tributaries to the river of new patients into your practice, right? So tributaries meaning inflows of new patients, multiple sources of new patients coming into your practice, the traditional internal, external, digital new patient intake, right? So when you think about internal new patient leads into the practice, these are referrals, right? People that are inside of your ecosystem already, sending more patients or new patient prospects into your ecosystem, right? So those were referrals. That's from internal activity, referrals from people that you already have a relationship with. Then there's external. External would be those things that you do outside of your practice to create new relationships and generate new qualified leads into the business. So traditionally, those were things like outside talks, dinner talks, corporate wellness programs, spinal screenings, billboards, yellow page, all those old traditional things that that have been, the old reliable source of new patients in chiropractic for the last 20, 30, 40 years, right? So then there's digital marketing, right? So the digital new patient leads, and that's everything that's done leveraging the web, right? Everything from your website, SEO, social media platforms, etc. Right? So all of these things that are delivered via the web, right? So internal, external, and digital. Here's what we usually plan on is, let's say, an even distribution. Let's a third, and a third of our resources will invest our time, energy, focus, and money. For example, a third, and a third across all three, hoping to see new patient leads coming in equally from all three. It's a nice, healthy distribution. It's a diversification of your marketing. And that's what we've been doing for the last 5-10 years in chiropractic, right? The best and most successful clients that we have, practices that you'll see, typically a nice even distribution across all three of those, leveraging all three opportunities. Well, if we saw anything in 2020, we saw that the traditional external marketing sort of get taken off the table. Obviously this is regional, depending on where you are in the world, when it hit, if it hit, how bad it hit, it may still be hitting you. And very, very likely it is. That so many of those opportunities to get a group of people together and get in front of that group of people, those have been taken off the table, right? So this is in the spirit of pivoting. We say, okay, so let's not focus our resources. Let's not be expecting or planning to do outside activities like external talks, dinner talks, corporate wellness, etc., because the community is just not ready for that yet. So what do? We'll divert those resources of time, energy, focus, and money, and we will reinvest them in internal marketing and digital marketing. That's, for example, is the high-level plan. So we are going to plan to divert our resources and focus on internal marketing and digital marketing, right? So for some of you, you might be having a bit of a holy shit moment right now, saying, oh, digital marketing, right? So it's like, talk about a wilderness. That's a jungle that I'm not comfortable in right now. So, here's the truth of this talk, and I'm going to say this briefly. You don't have to be an expert at digital marketing, but you do have to have an expert team of digital marketers, right? So I'm going to say that again, because I want to make sure you understand that. It's like, you personally don't have to be an expert in digital marketing, but you do have to surround yourself with a team of expert digital marketers. That's the highest leverage point going into 2021. You can handle the internal marketing, right? So this is something you probably feel very comfortable with. You probably have strong people on your team that you can delegate to, and you can even lead this yourself. But for those of you who have not yet said, all right, I'm going to be the digital marketing director for my practice, I don't want you to think, all right, my next 2-3 years is going to be about my going back to school and studying and becoming a digital marketing expert. Listen, you need to know what you need to know enough to surround yourself with the right digital marketers. And you're going to see we're going to be drilling down on that quite a bit in 2021, is we're going to bring our digital marketing experts in front of you guys. So stand by. We've got a panel that we're going to be putting together that we're going to bring in. We're going to be putting them in front of you for you to be able to listen and learn exactly what questions should I be asking to assemble that digital marketing team. How do I know I've got a great digital marketer to work with? How do I find the right vendor to help me with either my website or my SEO or my Facebook marketing or my Google AdWords, et cetera? We're going to get into talking about how to leverage your YouTube channel. We'll talk about the ideas around maybe your own podcast, right, et cetera. Dr. Pete, it's a big year ahead, and so much of it has to do with building a plan around how to pull off your marketing in 2021.
So I think we've given you some homework, some things to do here today on this episode, in this podcast. And again, if this is an area where you are struggling, you need help, please reach out to us. If you're looking for a good a lead, that you can confidently approach regarding digital marketing, please message us. We have amazing success partners in the Remarkable practice that we can introduce you to if you're looking for an endorsement and somebody that we have quote unquote vetted and that we know. We're happy to do that for you. If you need any help with this, I'll tell you, jump into our forum as well. If you're not plugged into the TRP private Facebook group, again, we are in there on a regular basis, just adding a lot of value on, how to market, and our coaches are in there, and we have amazing contribution from the others that are in that group. So jump into that group as well. Get plugged in if you're not already plugged into our Facebook group. Just again, a lot of great things are happening, great conversations around. It's a great place to post questions and challenges that you're having. Again, it's a free group. It's a private group. We are in there every day. And so I encourage you to do that. Let's make sure as part of your plan that you don't go alone. Make sure that you're surrounded, like you talked about, with a tribe, that you've learned one thing out of 2020. It's that, we're not going alone moving forward. And so if there's any way that we can support you and help you, and like you said, Dr. Stephen, if you want to reach out to us, please do that. We are here to serve you in any way on the journey. So remember that we are in the business of saving lives, and we don't have the luxury of not having a plan. And if you're going into the wilderness of 2021 and you're going in there without a plan, now is the time to stop, slow down, stop. Let's do the assessment as Dr. Stephen laid it out. Let's look at the resources that we have. Let's distribute those accordingly. Let's go with a game plan, and let's start executing. In the episodes that we're going to have following this, we're going to dig a little bit deeper into some of these categories, like Dr. Stephen said, with the digital marketing. We're going to do a panel. We're going to get into internal and even external marketing strategies. So we're going to dig in deeper. So, but as of right now, really our goal here, leaving this podcast here today, is make sure that you have a plan, and we'll be picking up the conversation right after that. All right, everybody, have an amazing rest of this week, and we'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Remarkable CEO Podcast. Remember, what the world needs now is chiropractic, and what chiropractic needs now is more successful chiropractors. If you like this podcast, please subscribe, share with a friend, and leave us a review. And if you'd like to connect with us personally, direct message us on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Instagram. Now go and be remarkable.